Hello everyone, and welcome to Thomas Top Tens. I'm one of your hosts, MasterOfTheLemons, aka Lemmy.
And I'm your other host, MultiGreenThunder.
And today, we're going to be talking about, this one's a little bit of a mouthful to explain, and you might not have got it from the title, but I'm really excited for the concept here. Out of all the events that have ever happened throughout the Thomas stories, anything at all, any event, which five, do we wish that we witnessed for ourselves? Like, if you could be there for, the Magic Railroad chase or whatever, and witness it with your own eyes, and it was actually real, and you could actually be there and witness it.
It could be anything from the Viking history of Sodor to Boulder's terror on the rails to the times Sir Hatt decided to run around on Sodor, causing confusion and delay.
Yes, and play hide and seek with children in the woods.
We could go to all the dynamic events. I mean, you could go from the time James's train caught on fire to the time Tom Tipper's bike fell off the pedestal and just Percy ran over it.
But yeah, so, basically any event throughout all of the Thomas universe, which ones would you have wanted to witness? And so, Multi, what's your number 5 then?
Okay, mine isn't really this grandiose event, but this would be really cool if you're in the perspective of, say, the driver and fireman in this situation. It is being Thomas's driver and fireman in the events of Lady Hatt's birthday party. When you see Sir Topham Hatt, your boss, and one of the most dignified men of the railway, covered in mud, and he needs to get to his wife's birthday, and he's like, I'll be your fireman. And then you are working alongside Sir Topham Hatt while he's shoveling the coal himself in order to get to his wife's birthday. How cool is that?
Yeah, that is pretty great. I mean, it's like a very unique situation to see the Fat Controller in. Especially if you worked on the railway or you knew the man personally. It would be insane to see him in that circumstance, and it would be something you would talk about for years to come. So I could totally see that.
What'd you do at work today, Tom? Oh, I just worked alongside the Fat Controller. Together, we were running Thomas. I swear it happened. Seriously, his suit got all dirty. Why was he wearing a suit, honey? I swear it happened! But yeah, it's very much, you get to work with the head of the island running an engine. How cool would that be?
Yeah, I mean, that would be a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
Yeah, so what's your number 5?
So my number 5... is Oliver's escape.
Ooh.
I would love to witness Oliver's escape. Because the thing is, I always wanted to see it growing up. Because when you watch Escape and when you read the story Escape, you don't see the actual escape. You see the very end of it. And Oliver talks about it in the past tense, and you get little bits and pieces, but it's like, the way he talks about it makes it sound like a lot went down that we did not see. Where, like, Douglas is like, that was a near thing, and Oliver's like...
We've seen worse.
Yeah.
So,
like,
what was the worst? Go back to that. Do you think... What did Douglas say to him after the fact? He's just looking at him like, what was the worst that you don't want to know, man? You don't want to know.
In the Railway series, Oliver actually follows that up and explains.
Oh, yes. Oh, good point. There was worse.
Every time there's a weird gap in the TV series, it's usually because they cut something out that was important.
Darn you, TV series!
But he still doesn't explain it in vivid detail though. He only explains like a single instance where he was like, he had to basically hide away in a cutting for like several days because diesels were looking for him. But other than that, there really wasn't much description.
Guys, imagine how cool that would be in real life. Like, there's only a runaway engine and they're hiding it. Think about that for a moment. How cool is that?
It's really cool, but it's also terrifying because it's like if you get caught, you're going to jail.
It's like those stealth modes in the video games. Have you played the Arkham games? Like when the people with the guns notice you, it's like done. Ah!
Yeah, it's exactly like that. I mean, it's very tense. And if you're in that situation, basically stealing this engine, I mean, you are committing a very serious crime. You're probably going to go to jail for decades. So if it doesn't pan out...
You know it was bad for Oliver. Think about his crew as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, they really are taking a risk there. And if we were in that situation, we'd be taking a risk too. But at the same time, I want to know what happened. Like, I want to know in detail what that escape was comprised of, and what exactly went down. I know that it must have been a really interesting story. It must have lasted at least a few days. It could have lasted weeks. I would love to actually witness the events of that and see Oliver's bravery and heroism and see the near misses that he had and all that. And the only, we've never seen that before. So I would love to actually witness that. If I were there, I could see in vivid detail this incredibly important moment in history for Thomas that we actually don't know that much about. So that's my number 5.
Right, so my number 4 is one that I think a lot of people might think about, but I just think it would just be a really cool thing. And this one's probably my most... A lot of mine are very set events. This is one that could span the farthest out of them, how long a period this would be. Seeing Thomas first come to Sodor, and Edward as well, just...
I was gonna put that on my list. I decided not to, but I would love to see that.
They were a huge part of how the railway started. Like, imagine seeing them putting down the rails, for future iconic locations and stuff, like seeing the coffee pots being phased out, it's like it'd be a really neat experience.
That would be the coolest thing, because it's like that's essentially the origin story for the Northwestern Railways. Thomas and Edward arriving in 1915 and actually laying down the rails. I mean, a lot of the tracks were already there because the 3 existing railways were already present. But Thomas and Edward arrived to stitch all of that together and make what we now know as the Northwestern Railway. It's the birth of the railway that we have become so invested in. And we've never seen that story. It's like...
They were there for the railway's birth.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a beautiful idea. And I would love to see, firstly, just our main character arriving, because, we got that in, The Adventure Begins, but they really distorted the timeline, and they had Thomas arrive, 5th.
Imagine seeing Thomas coming off the boat and all that stuff.
That would just be so cool, because, Thomas is our main character, and it's not just because, we decided, right? It's because he does have special significance. He was the first engine to arrive, he helped build the railway, he has a very special connection to this place. He arrived pretty much right after...
Bertie shows up and he's like, I'm better and faster than you. Bus, I laid down this railway!
Yeah, exactly. And also, considering that Thomas basically... I mean, he was sent to Sodor almost right after he was built. So, I mean, really, Sodor, unlike most engines who had a prior history, Sodor is kind of the only home Thomas has ever known. So he's closer to this island than anybody. And it would be amazing to see him first forge that connection. And also, like you said, meeting the engines that are already there. Neil and the other Sodor and mainland engines would be gone by that point because they were scrapped before the Northwestern was built. However, he would meet the coffee pots, he would meet the Wellsworth and Suttery engines. Seeing him meet all those engines and meet Edward for the first time would be amazing. And Thomas is in brown and Edward is in red. You could put Thomas in green, I guess, if you really wanted. Just seeing that his first arrival, seeing what is the birth of this railway that we are all so invested in, would be amazing to witness that in person. Because they don't realize that such a momentous occasion is happening. It's just life to them. But to us, we would see it and think, oh my God, it's starting.
Exactly. This is where it all began.
Yeah, exactly.
So, what's your number 4?
So, my number 4 is the Fat Controller finding out that Diesel is a liar. In Duck and the Diesel. Because the thing is, we hear, basically, Duck...
That would be one of the top things I think I would love to see, scenes of and stuff like that. That would be awesome.
Yeah, this whole thing, basically this list... the thing is, this list kind of corresponds with the question, what questions do I want answered the most? Because I'm thinking, if somebody gave me, a special machine where I could go to any point in this fictional universe, if I could...
You'd want to learn the things you didn't know.
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't just want to say, it wouldn't be like going and seeing the pyramids, where I'm like, wow, that's amazing, and I appreciate it.
Instead, you want to see, how are these things built?
Yeah, exactly. I want answers to questions that I don't have answers to yet. Because the thing is, I kind of have already been to these events in a way. That's what the books do. That's what the show does. It immerses us in this world. And I have answers to most things. But I don't have answers to the things that I'm mentioning. And this is one of them, where it's I want to see the look on the Fat Controller's face when he put 2 and 2 together that Diesel was a manipulative, lying, monster of a character who has basically...
It's probably the most major off-screen event we've seen that wasn't just a major part of history. It was actually very directed in the direct plot.
Yeah, that's the weird thing.
You don't see that very much.
I honestly like that we don't see it because the story is from Duck's perspective. That's how it's supposed to be told.
I like that it went in the direction it did.
Yeah, because the thing is, Duck wouldn't have witnessed it because Duck was away at the time, right? And all of a sudden he gets this relieving news. Oh yeah, it turns out Diesel was a monster and we're bringing you back. And it's like...
Yeah, we decided you're cool again.
And Duck's even a little surprised. He's like, home, sir? And the Fat Controller's like, yes, Duck, home. I never trusted Diesel. I would love to see that because it's like, Diesel is just like a total psychopath. And I would love... And he is just so happy when Duck is sent away and he has destroyed his life. And Diesel thinks he has won totally. And then all of a sudden, I would love to see the Fat Controller waltz up to Diesel and say, I know exactly what you've been up to, Diesel, and I'm not happy. Diesel, the look on his face would be perfect. I'd love to see it in CGI. Where at first Diesel is just sneering, like, yeah, I won. And then, the Fat Controller comes up to him, and Diesel his face drops. He's just like, oh my god. He'd fume, he'd get furious, right? He'd be like, how could you have figured it out? How could you have... I considered every detail. How is it possible that you... And the Fat Controller's just like, can it, Diesel? You're out of here. And the Fat Controller, just sends him out. And Diesel's just fuming and just leaves in total disgrace and shame. We never got to see that. He's gone by the time Duck gets back, which really is good for Duck, because he doesn't want to have to deal with Diesel. But that would have been such an explosive, chaotic moment. Because when you catch a psychopath out like that, they're gonna flip on you and just totally break down. And Diesel would just get furious. Like, he goes from being at the top of his game and being a genius who engineered this whole situation to being a total failure and being found out and publicly humiliated. It would be a messy situation.
Are you sure you want to be there for that?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it would be really great to see.
No, that's awesome. Anything else to say before I go into my number 3?
No, I think I'm good.
Alright. This might shock some of you guys, but I love the idea of being a part of this event. My number 3 is the experience of discovering Misty Island in Misty Island Rescue.
That would be really cool.
How amazing. I already love learning about, old things aren't around anymore. We're integrated into things, and things about, lost castles or ruins and stuff like that. But imagine you literally found a whole island that's uninhabited, or actually, kind of had, but you have, a railway, and you have, this... Think about this, the Misty Island at its core. Isn't this such a freaking cool idea?
Yeah, no, it's in addition to being just the nature of it itself is just gorgeous. It's an amazing, beautiful place with the mist and the trees and the towering lines up in the hills.
You want to live like Indiana Jones, discover Misty Island, and then you hear about it from Cranky. It's kind of the legend of it or whatever. It's cool. It's so many mysteries. It's a new thing.
That honestly, man, because you're right. I mean, it's this thing that's been cut off for years and years. We have no idea how long, and I would just love to rediscover it and just because it's a lot like finding Great Waterton, except on a greater scale. And
it was the first time they also did, aside from a little bit of stuff they did with Magic Railroad, this was also the first time, because a lot of times they really wanted to put everything on Sodor. This is one of the first times where we're going to explore a new spot that's off of Sodor and check out this cool place.
That was really inventive. I honestly would have put something like this on my list, but I would have done a slightly different take. Where now that you mentioned Misty Island Rescue and kind of describe it this way, I think what I would love to witness is not rediscovering Misty Island, but when it was first lost. I would love to see the tunnel being closed off. When did that happen? Because Misty Island has clearly been cut off from Sodor.
The railway was closed and the men found work.
Yeah,
wherever the line in Sleeping Beauty goes.
Misty Island has clearly been cut off from the rest of civilization for decades. I want to know, when did that happen? What was the big event that they're okay, that's it. We're not dealing with these people anymore, and they cut off Misty Island. They literally, how much hatred must be there? How much of a strain between the relationships of these two islands does there have to be for them to literally stuff garbage down the one entrance to Misty Island just because they really...
There's a movie waiting for that!
Yeah, it's
Where's before Misty Island Rescue?
Yeah, I would love to see the origins there. I bet that, it might be... I mean, the reason Bash, Dash, and Ferdinand are so crazy, it's probably because they've been isolated for years and years.
Exactly! It makes kind of sense that the crazy old hillbillies, because that's what they are!
Yeah, they've been in the total backwaters of this area for so long that they just don't, they haven't been interacting with anybody other than what I'm guessing is a very small local population. It's insane that all these years, while all the normal Thomas stories were going on, the engines on Misty Island were only a few miles away doing their thing, totally isolated from everything. Isn't it weird? They basically slept through modernization. They never even knew that was a thing.
Man, imagine the first time, Ferdinand and Bash and Dash saw a diesel.
That would be so weird. They wouldn't even hear news of that. They would have no idea that was a thing.
They see it and they're like, is that a coach?
Imagine, the struggle it would be for them. Because once the tunnels opened up again and the Fat Controller's like, welcome to my railway. It's like...
It's like in the movies when there's, a caveman that come to modern day or something like that.
Exactly. It's like they would come to Sodor. At first, they'd be so happy to be here and to interact with the engines, but they've been away so long, things would have changed so much. It would be really difficult.
You could work that into a thing to where it's explains why they like to be on Misty Island so much. Maybe because it's the most comfortable place they can be
Yeah,
at.
that's the thing. It's at this point, I mean, their culture and identity is so radically different from modern society and just from normal society in general. I think the reason they broke away at first was they had to be very oddballs, very different from the rest of the engines and the rest of society, and that's why they were closed off in the first place. But they've probably become a lot more different now because they've been away I'm guessing they've been closed off for 40 or 50 years. It's been all those designs, they're from the early 1900s. So
several years later.
So that would be fascinating to see.
I definitely agree. We could talk about this topic for an hour, but how about we go ahead and get to your number 3? What was yours?
All right, my number 3 is when the coffee pots were scrapped, which is actually a lot later than I used to think it was. I don't know that the Wellsworth and Suttery engines were ever scrapped. I've not seen that or read that anywhere. However, the coffee pots were scrapped, but in the 50s. It's really weird. And it's really blunt. In Sodor People, History, and Railways, it just says that. It's just there's some sort of in-character letter written by somebody who worked at Farquhar. It was the station master at Farquhar. And he talks about how, every now and then we would have Mr. Hatt's vertical boiler engines working up here on this line. And it's a pity no one photographed them before they were scrapped. And I'm just like, what? Wait, hold on, they were scrapped? Why in the 50s? I would get it if it was like with the Sodor and Mainland, right? They scrapped their engines. That railway had a different identity. It was a different generation. I get that.
Show's over, folks!
But the Fat Controller deciding to scrap the engines that he designed himself in the 50s, he scrapped them in the 50s? Really? I would like to see that happen. Not just because I want to see them scrapped, but because I want to know why. Why would the Fat Controller do that? Can you imagine him actually scrapping the engines he built, himself?
Jeez.
That's...
It's something you'd want to know answers to.
Yeah, what went down there? Did he have no choice? Was it a mistake? Or was he in a desperate situation? How...
Was he drunk?
Yeah, how could he bring himself to do that to his own creations? Especially when the Fat Controller's so compassionate to steam engines, how could he possibly do that? So I would love to see what went down there. Was it
the only place coffee belongs is in a styrofoam cup? Oh!
I just, it sounds so out of character, and I would like to know why that happened, because, it's so strange for him to do, and I would want answers to that.
Yeah, I'd like to know that too. Anyways, moving on to my number 2, is definitely not a very deep, questionable event that happened, but it is a very exciting one nonetheless, is I would have loved to have been part of both would have loved and maybe not would have loved to be part of the rescue crew in Toby and the Flood.
That would have been very
Imagine how amazing of an event that would be. You're literally on a team that's just literally trying to save a breakaway engine floating on a raft in one of the worst storms of services. Okay, I don't know about that. But literally a dam is recently broken up. And you are literally in a situation where you are having a helicopter drop a rope down to you, attaching it to your engine, and pulling it along like you're playing around with two little RC cars or something, and literally just, or trying to pull something with your truck that's stuck in a ditch, and pulling this freaking 19 whatever tram engine, trying to pull him from going off a waterfall. If that's not a good story at the bar, I don't know what.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Am I the only one who was always really, like, unsettled by the fact that he ties it onto the buffer and not onto, like, the actual raft? Like, isn't he going to pull Toby right off of there?
There are so many Wind Railway pulling string jokes you could make right now, but not good ones coming to my mind.
It just, like, it seems so unsafe. Like, really there? You'll pull him right off. I mean, I guess then he won't drift away. He'll just be... Thing is, if Toby fell in the river, he'd honestly be safer than if he went over the edge. Because they can just pull him out later. But, yeah, that's, like, probably one of the most catastrophic events in Thomas. And it's like, you know, to really witness that, and it's such a tense situation and such a massive deal. I mean, it's really amazing they even managed to save Toby. Firstly, it's amazing Toby got himself in that situation in the first place. Like, his luck is terrible. Just poor Toby. Yes. And secondly, it's amazing that they were able to save him. Like, Harold is just awesome.
Props to Harold.
Yeah,
and we're not giving any credit to Percy.
There's nobody he can't save. He's on it. He's
that good. Anyways, how about your number 2?
So, my number 2 is something I've wanted to know for a really long time. You know those 2 blue engines and the 3 railway engines, 98462 and 87546?
Yes.
So, we know very little about them. It's not even... Those numbers aren't even written in people history and railways or reading between the lines or anything. It's literally just, like, from one letter that Audrey wrote as an explanation to a kid who asked who the engines were at some point. Where he said, that's 98462 and 87546. They were rude and nasty, and so the Fat Controller sent them away. And it's like, it's just covering up the fact that the artist just was really liberal about it and just drew in a bunch of engines that, like, weren't characters.
What could possibly go wrong? I sure hope this franchise doesn't stick around for 70 years.
But basically, so I would love to know what happened. Did they do something really, really bad? Are they, like, serious villains who did something just criminal, or were they just really inconsiderate and rude, and that was enough? Like, where the Fat Controller's just like, I don't like your attitude, you're out of here. It kind of seems like it's the more boring answer, which is the latter. It's like, hey, they were just.
But what if it was the epic answer?
Yeah, like I kind of like the idea that they did something really, really bad, some big underhanded plot that went horribly wrong, and they got sent away. And I would love to see that story. Like, what happened there? You know, where did they go? What was that like? I would love to be present for that. I would love to witness them being sent away. Just like Diesel, really, is I would like to see why they were sent away. You know, what tipped the Fat Controller off to the fact that they were no good. I agree. I would love to see that. So that's my number 2.
All right. So for my number 1, it's perhaps one of the biggest events in the show, and I like my choice here. Thomas gets his branch line. It's literally the event that changed everything. Imagine being on the crew when you saw, just this mixed traffic engine, new engine, have this horrible crash, and then, the engine helps them out and stuff like that. It was literally the moment that led to Thomas getting his branch line and becoming the face of Sodor. Imagine if you're telling, like, your friends or something like that. It's like, yeah, I remember back before he was famous, I helped him with the famous crash James had. Yeah. And that's before he was known as Thomas the Tank Engine. We just called him the Blue E2 or something like that. Or number 1,
Yeah, that would be so cool. It's like if you had that firsthand experience. It's like what we said earlier. It just becomes so significant.
Mm-hmm. I mean, at the time you wouldn't know, but then later on it would be a memory. You'd look back and it's like, wow, it shows that he wanted to become something so huge.
Yeah, and the thing is, I mean, I think that, I was also going to put this one on my list. And I was basically at first I was thinking like, okay, what do I want on here? Henry's crash, Duke being rediscovered, Thomas first going on his branch line, Thomas first arriving on the island. I put all those things because like those two Thomas moments that you mentioned are really like I would want to see those as well if I were like kind of sightseeing things that we already have seen but in person. I just decided to re-engineer my list to only include things I haven't seen because I feel like that would be even better.
I like it though. It's a good different perspective. I want some of these answers too.
Yeah, but it's like that would be one of the maybe the most important Thomas moment ever to see because it's like that's just because he's fought so long to accomplish this, right? And I would just love to see his reaction when he gets it and he looks at his branch line for the first time. He goes past that signal box and under that pedestrian bridge. He sees, the fruits of his labor for the first time when he's been fighting for this for 10 years. I mean, he arrives in 1915 and he gets it in 1925. That's like a long time he's been fighting for this. And so I would just love to see just the look of just accomplishment and relief over his face as he first gets his branch line. It would be amazing. And we get to see him first go on his branch line and the adventure begins, but it's very matter of fact. I love that movie, but it's more like it's kind of like Thomas is like, oh hi Mr. Coffee Pot, and he's all excited and he's like but he's all peppy about it, right? Where I think he would be like,
astonished.
Yeah, he would be. I feel like Thomas would be kind of more. He would be more taken aback, and he would kind of. It would be a lot more like receiving a degree or something, right? It would be like a.
Well, the thing about that scene in Thomas and the Breakdown Train, which probably took place a little bit after the fact, but it's like him pulling his own trains while across the pedestrian thing, you see Gordon pulling his own train. Like, he's doing what he's set out to do, and it's amazing. He finally has that.
Yeah, that's a very great pick for your number one multi. I think I even considered it for my number one as well before I kind of restructured how I approached the question. It's really fantastic. My number one, I struggled with this because I really wanted to include it, but I wasn't sure if I should because it's not totally a Thomas thing, but it is referenced pretty heavily in Thomas, so I'll mention it. And this is the thing I would like to see more than anything else. I want to see City of Truro breaking the speed record and going 100 miles an hour. Not because...
But did it happen?
Yeah, not just because it was so cool, but because... it's unofficial. We don't know if he really did it or not. Because there's a debate. It's basically...
This is official history, by the way, people. This is, like, something that's actually a debate.
It's debated whether City of Truro was actually the first engine to go 100 miles per hour. Because, like, people kind of say that he was, but it wasn't official. Like, it wasn't properly recorded. Whereas the Flying Scotsman was the first to officially go 100 miles per hour. It's very interesting, because if City of Truro didn't, that means Scotsman has the record. But if City of Truro did, then Scotsman doesn't. So it's very interesting. This is like an Amelia Earhart situation, where it's like, there's this thing about the real world that we'll just never know what happened, really. Because I'm sure the driver and the people involved said, "Oh yeah, City of Truro broke 100," but we will never know for sure. And so, more than anything in Thomas, because the thing is, we can always write a story answering all the other questions that I asked. We can write a story answering any of this, right? But we can't write a story answering real life. Because there is a real answer. There is a true...
I mean, we can try, but it might not end.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like we can't write history. I mean, it's either he broke the record or he didn't. And I would love to know which one is the truth. Because that really severely impacts how Duck would view City of Truro, how all engines would view City of Truro. And you know what the thing is? City of Truro knows whether he broke it or not. And so if he really didn't, if he actually didn't break 100, that means he's been lying all these years.
It reminds me of, for those who like football around here, the Immaculate Reception, where they don't know whether it was an interception or a fumble or whatever. It's a very important part of engine lore, and you might never know the truth.
Yeah, and it's like, it's so... It would impact how I would write City of Truro's character so much, because it's basically a matter of, do you believe it and think that he broke the record, in which case he's an upstanding engine that has accomplished a great deal and he should be respected? Or is he lying about breaking the record?
Is he a fraud?
Yeah. In which case, Scotsman would be furious, because he'd be like, I broke it for real, and then you go and pretend. You know, it's like, it would be so interesting to see the dynamic between those two. And if it ever came out that City of Truro really was a fraud, Duck would be crushed. It would be such an interesting story to see. So I would love to see that for myself. I would love to know the real answer. You know, what kind of character are we dealing with here? What kind of event really went down? And that is the one thing on this entire list you legitimately would never know unless you were really there. So that's why it's my number one.
And that's why that was the best one to end off with. I'm glad that yours went before mine, or after mine. That's a good way to end the list. Good.
Well, thanks.
Totally planned that. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching this episode. Once again, if you guys have any ideas for future episodes, please feel free to leave them down in the comment section below. We actually listen, and we like to take suggestions.
Yeah, we really love getting suggestions for what we should rank next. Because we always kind of struggle to figure out what we should make an episode about. And, you know, it's always great to see what people want to see. And also, you know, what moments would you really like to be present for? You know, what things that have happened throughout the history of Thomas, and throughout the history of the real world even, in relation to railways, what things do you really wish you witnessed?
If you had a TARDIS, where would you go?
Yeah, exactly. So, you know.
And also, if you guys were there when he broke the speed record, please let us know if he broke it or not.
Yeah, please let us know. I don't know if we have any 100-year-olds in watching this, but if we do...
But if we do, hit us up and down in the comment section below.
Alright, thank you very much, everyone, for watching. I've been Master of the Lemons, a.k.a. Lemmy.
And I've been MultiGreenThunder.
And this has been Thomas Top 10s.
Thank you for watching.
See you, everyone.